All right, everybody. Thank you for joining today's OLM's Upstream Issue Triage meeting. It is Thursday, July 21st, 2022, and we're going to be reviewing some of the RUCPAC issues that exist. So I'll start sharing my screen. Ooh, that's a lot of stuff. There we go. Okay, can everybody see the operator framework / RUCPAC issue list?
Good to go.
Perfect. Okay, so I think some of these I didn't remove the needs grooming label. So if we hit anything that we saw last week, we'll just remove that label, and then we'll start filtering without this needs grooming if we get through enough. So, okay. This is incorporate changes from new bundle APIs, and this is number 396. We recorded the underlying bundle file system representation and added a new conversion method to transform registry v1 bundles to plain bundles. These new APIs should be incorporated in the logic of the respective provisioners, and it's part of 406. What is 406? Follow up. Oh, it's just some tasks. Okay. Does this need to live in a milestone? So it seems like it's already been added to the backlog milestone. For the sake of clarity, should remain. Oh, look at that. Yeah, this makes sense that it's in here, I think. Okay, so we'll start grooming this one. Okay, so 396 is merged, but it's not merged into master. Ryan King. Okay. So the functionality still isn't present. The issue probably needs to be groomed and should remain in the backlog for now. And 406, which was what? So the ask is to close 406 and create multiple individual issues. I have no problem doing that. Does anybody object to that? Tim?
Can you hear me from here?
I can hear you. Can you, are you okay closing issue 406 and separating it into separate issues so that it's easier to view progress?
Yeah, we could probably close this one too, to be honest. Sorry, I was doing some Jira stuff at the same time.
That's fine.
In terms of the registry V1 ticket, yeah, we could probably, so it looks like this is just the tracking vehicle right now. We could probably close this. Yeah, it looks like this is just a tracking ticket.
Yep, so the idea would be to split each of these into, oh, I see. So these already are written out. These already are issues.
Yes, they are.
Okay, so the idea, so the idea of this ticket was to track everything we needed to follow up on the introduction of the registry v1 provisioner bits, and then an issue was created for each of them. And then this is meant to be a top level thing to track everything, but it's been in a number of milestones. And what we'd like to do is close this and then just speak to the individual tickets. Is that basically what we're looking at?
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Before we do that, is there any concern losing this top level tracking bit? Is there any way we want to like tie these together? We can make a tag and tag each of them. That way, I don't want to finish like 4 of these items and then have the 5th one just hang out in the backlog, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think if we prioritize them accordingly, I don't know if they've been refined or not yet, but if we're refining them properly, I don't think we really need a tag so much as we need to just be like, hey, this is important to do. And if we're following the tags correctly, then we'll just do it in the right time. Unless you're saying that we still want to track these all together, which I don't know if that's necessarily as important as just getting them done at some point based on their priorities.
I think that's fair, as long as we continue to go through all the issues. And make progress on actually making sure that we're pulling the right things in. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I guess
do you-
it's more of a philosophical question for the future of having tickets like this that have multiple subtasks that are broken out into tickets. How we deal with that in the future. I think for now, like 2 of these are already being worked on or have tracking tickets associated with them. So it's like getting done soon, I think. But I think
Okay.
for the future of like working with these, it's important to talk about.
Okay, Joe, is Joe in the meeting?
He is
I
not.
don't think so. I was just talking with him a second ago. Yeah, looks like he's busy.
Okay, well, if you guys, since you guys have been the ones primarily implementing the work, if you don't think there's a need to keep a top level tracking ticket, we're going to close this. And then we'll just track each of the individual issues. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so okay, so it may make sense for us to go and open. Does it make sense to use some of the working group meeting to actually decide how we can track sets of issues? Or how the team would prefer to do that? Because I can imagine that there might be a want to track everything that needs to be completed so that a user experience is achieved, right? And
Yeah, that just sounds like milestones to me. And I think we can totally talk about that at some point during this meeting, whenever we get towards the end and we triage some stuff, I think.
yeah, I think so let's just make a follow. I'm just going to add a comment that there will be a follow-up to determine and document how sets of issues that implement a feature act. Okay. Okay, so that seems good. I think we can. Okay, so that one. Close issue. Boom. All right. Look at that. 15 minutes into the meeting and we finished one already. Fantastic. Okay, boom. Now, let's look at this really quickly. So the functionality, this is what you mentioned. Now, he also wants, Dan also wanted this issue to be groomed. So it seems like this issue was meant to act on some changes that were introduced by a PR that wasn't merged to master, and it asks to clean this up. Is Dan in the call?
He is not, no.
Okay, so we need to groom this. What needs grooming? So is anyone actively working on getting this pull request that Ryan King merged into this branch into master? Has anyone been doing this?
I think that is already merged. Maybe I don't get the question.
This is merged it not into master, right? So this is merged into a separate branch. And the issue that we were grooming is based on actually updating RecPack to use the new APIs. And so what we need to do is actually make sure that 396 is merged into main and then do this issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry again, Alex. I've been looking at some Jira stuff. I don't know if I have any. Well, I think this work is pretty valuable. I don't know if I have any real interest in merging that branch into main right now. Obviously, if we hold off, we're gonna have to run into some potentially pretty annoying rebases. But I think if I remember correctly, we just merged that to appease, sprint velocity. And I think there's also a work in progress PR from Ryan that's been sitting too. Might be worth just closing this out in the meantime. Maybe we can double check whether there's a kind of like tracking ticket for bundle conversion logic.
That's fair. Yeah, let's look at issue.
Just to pipe in, I'm from the Operator SDK team, and Ryan was supposed to be working on a CLI piece to use that bundle API. And Ryan recently left Red Hat, and so I don't know if he's going to be continuing any work on the work in progress PRs that he had. And I think the SDK team is working on getting some people to cover those. So we might have some other people be hopping in soon to take over some of the work that he was doing.
Right.
Do we just want to slap a needs grooming label on that, Alex, then, and just icebox it for a bit? Maybe this is something we can discuss in that what Repactive stream channel. Maybe just get
Yeah.
Shells to
So I'm
organize
not
this.
quite sure I'm following what exactly we need to do here. I think that I understand the problems, which is we have some changes that fundamentally change our package structure when it comes to bundles and bundle formats, which I think is really good for the health of the repo. It was like a really good feature, but that's not in main right now. And so I would think that there would be some tracking ticket, and I think we may be looking at it already, or we're looking at it a moment ago, but I wasn't quite following. Some tracking ticket that just says merge this into main. I think as clear as we can define that, it would be nice for external contributors to be able to just come in and say, oh, cool, I'm going to pick this up and kind of get this to completion. So that's what I would advocate for one way or another. We don't have to do it now or have like an important priority. I think that just making sure that we can get somebody on this work and it's well context is important. I think that's kind of what Dan was saying, which is to say we should make this a bit clearer so that moving forward somebody can do this.
I agree.
I am still a little hesitant about merging that branch into main, given there was post-merge review comments.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we can just grab that context and be like, hey, we don't know if this is exactly ready for main yet, but here are the changes. Let's try to massage these into main in whatever way that looks like, whether that be merging the other PR that Ryan had, or whatever. So I do think the changes are really nice, and I think that eventually they could be good for.
Okay, so so we did find the ticket. This is support transforming registry V1 bundles into plain Kate's bundles, which basically looks
Yeah, that'd be one portion of it.
yeah. And so what I'm going to say is 396 can be used as a starting point for someone interested in delivering this feature. I'm going to call out that there have been 396 as a few open, we'll call them post-merge comments that should be addressed in the PR submitted to master. Marking this as a good first issue. Okay, how does that sound? So we're calling out that 396 is a great starting point for anybody to get involved with the project because there's a reference that they can go off of. There's a couple of post-merge comments that they need to address prior to merging them into master, and that, I think that will do enough to get in a good state, and then we can remove this needs grooming tag. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okie dokie. All right, and I'm going to change this. It is no longer needs grooming. It's a good first issue. And I think we're good. It's in the backlog. So if somebody wants to take it, they can take it. Now, that one's in a good space. So what's our next one? We go back to the very first one, which we haven't closed yet. Perfect. So we'll just go back here. And I'm just going to say EXDX. This issue was discussed in the upstream issue triage meeting. There was, so we've updated Which one was that? If I reload this, this should get referenced by the thing. No. This was 67. We've updated 67 to a point. Oh, hasn't merged. Okay. Oh shoot, I didn't mean to close that. Here we go. Okay. I'm removing the needs grooming. And okay, now we finally finished the initial one. How fun is that?
Very
Okay. Now what's up? Revisit opt-out. So I think this one is actually assigned and we said what we need to do. So I think we just need to remove the needs grooming.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. All right. Now there we go. So that one's done. Revisit 293. Revisit whether RucPack B1 Alpha 1 has valid bundle BI status conditions should be removed. Have we made a decision on this, Tim? I see that you opened this issue. All right. What's 331 look like?
Yeah, I think we really need to have a meeting about this to just talk it through a bit more as a group, or have some kind of GitHub discussion or something. Because I don't know if we've reached a consensus on what we want for this kind of UX. Because if we go back to the other, is this the original issue? What was the issue we were looking at a moment ago? Can we go back to that?
The original issue calls out this bundle status condition, and whether or not we should remove
Yeah.
it. And so
Yeah, and this feels like it's a lot. It's like indicative, or I mean, it's more related to a couple of different issues. One of those is what you just showed, and then the other is revisit the bundle instance one that we just removed the needs grooming for. And it's mainly just deciding how we kind of want the bundle instance, bundle status kind of user experience to look like. Because I don't think we're quite happy with it right now, but we haven't really reached a form of consensus on it.
okay, so I think I have two comments here. I think this is the meeting that we should be having to kind of triage all these things, but
Okay.
we don't have a ton of people, and I'd like people to weigh in. So this is obviously not the ideal time to have this meeting to address this issue. The other thing I'm noticing is it seems like we could probably consolidate some of these tickets into a single ticket that kind of just addresses, calls these out as acceptance criteria, right? That actually deal with updating the bundle API, because I think you probably need to consider them all together because it's the gateway into the API, right? For communicating what's happening. And so fleshing that all out in one place is probably nice. And
sorry, go ahead. You weren't done.
Yeah, sorry, I ramble. And then lastly, I think because of these two things, it may make sense to initiate a upstream conversation that focuses on, hey, we want to triage this issue. We want to have a meeting, let people know we're going to be making these API design choices, and then maybe call it out in the working group meeting so we can triage it there. And in order to get that to go smoothly, I think we need to kind of round up all of the issues that are related to the status, the API, the user experience, and have a good idea on like what shortcomings we want to address.
That sounds right to me. I was also going to say we could potentially do a milestone and just throw all these into a like address bundle instance UX kind of milestone. And that way they're all together. That was the other thing I had in mind, but I think that a conversation could be interesting. An upstream Cube Slack. I think that could be suitable as well, as long as we are going back to this at some point. I think I could handle that, getting that conversation started upstream if we wanted to do that instead.
I think that's a good call. So what we can do is, I'm just going to call out that Tyler Slayton is going to work. I'm actually going to just very quickly in the upstream repo, or sorry, in the upstream Slack, and just mention that in the upstream meeting, we discussed how there's a need to revamp. There's a couple issues with the UX in terms of like the status and what that looks, the current layout for the status. We want to address those issues. Is there a way we can consolidate them? And then I can point to that in this issue so that we don't lose any of the conversation. So I'm just going to add that.
Sure.
I'll just be a second. I'm just typing in my Slack. Okay, and the goal is to decide how we want to track the user experience issues and how we're going to define the user experience. Okay. Okay, everybody, so I created a conversation on Slack to oh, my dog just ran in. Hey, Watson. Return. Okay, okay. Okay. Awesome. So this is still going to need grooming, obviously. So I'm going to leave this label on. And after we have the conversation on Slack, we'll come back and update this on the end. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okie dokie. This is kind of related. I don't think I need to, maybe I can copy paste this. You think it's worth copy pasting this response on the one that's a slightly higher level?
Can you say that one more time?
Do you think it makes sense to, I don't think we need to necessarily comment this on every single one. It seems like it should just be follow-up. That, like, I was wondering if we need to like comment how we're going to change this in each and every issue, but it seems like it might be better just to have that conversation on Slack and then identify all the UX changes and then update them accordingly based on the outcome from that conversation.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Okay. So we'll leave that good for, we'll leave that. Okay. Okay. And this one. So Tim, I see that you submitted this issue. It's about adding support for referencing multiple sources within an individual bundled resource. You include an E to E strawman. What about this issue needs grooming?
1 second. It looks like it's just, I don't know if it needs grooming necessarily. Might just be more, geez, brain's not working. Might be more of a discussion point versus a dedicated ticket. I think we've seen, pod spec support multiple containers or defining multiple containers might be something we want to pursue at the bundle API level, such that I could source maybe a Helm chart on top of a plain bundle in the same sourcing process. But it's unclear whether we have concrete use cases. And I guess I already noted that in the comment below. So I don't know how much of this needs grooming. Maybe we just transition to a discussion.
I think that's a good idea because it basically looks like you're hoping to get, additional eyes on this and to make a decision on how we want to go forward with this. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, this is just the potential RFE or getting ahead of a potential RFE.
Yeah, so we got a general. Does it make sense to discuss this in the working group meeting? Or how do we want to drive people to this discussion? Tim?
Oh, I'm nowhere, student. I'm sorry. I've been jumping between Slack and everything. I think you're asking like, how do we triage discussions?
Well, my question is, how do we want to direct people to add, to weigh in on a decision? Because it seems like right now we can create all these issues, and this is clearly one where you've outlined that, hey, we could do this, but we need to think about the implications and the ultimately land on a decision. So you're asking for help, but outside of us looking at it right now, and I don't think there's too many people that can just look at this and within a few seconds form a strong opinion. That means we're going to probably have to ask people to look at it, think about it, provide feedback, and I'm questioning what's the right way to do that. Does it make sense just to call it out on Slack? Should we start bringing these discussions up on our working group meeting so that we can have feedback? That means some of the discussion might get lost. So it maybe make more sense just to direct people to this discussion? How I don't think we have a defined process for creating conversation pieces, and I just wanted to know if there was a preferred way that you'd like to get the ball rolling on this one.
So honestly, I think this can sit in the backlog for now. In terms of I don't have a great solution in terms of how do we point people to, or rather, it seems like there's a couple different threads. It's how do we incorporate discussions within this own meeting, or potentially any of the upstream meetings. In addition, how do we actively ensure these discussions are making progress? Yeah, that's probably something we'll need to iron out. In terms of these discussions, historically, what we've done is just nudge people along in the upstream Slack channel, but people have been pretty good about quick feedback through a Rockback repository.
Mm-hmm.
So I worry less about that. Maybe there's the need for directing some portion of the README towards this discussions, hey, for RFEs, recommended open a discussion or something like that. So maybe we can have that language expressed at that level. Yeah, it's going to need some more thought, but certainly the maintainers chiming in, I think is an expectation.
Right, no, I agree.
Outside of me rambling, I don't think we're going to be able to solve this issue, or this gap rather.
Yeah, no, not in this call. It just creates the issue, rather than just saying we're not going to solve it here, we should solve it eventually, and then there's work associated with solving that. So perhaps we'll just create it as a discussion for now, and we can maybe we have a discussion on upstream track on how we want to refactor how we actually drive discussions to getting feedback and closing. So I'm just gonna I'm just going to create an upstream Slack message and mention, actually, maybe it makes sense to just create it as an issue. Yeah, I think I'm going to just create an issue and just title it. All right. Hey, Tyler and Tim, do you guys think, and Aki, actually, everybody here, do you guys think it makes sense to create an issue or even a discussion possibly, so that we can actually update some of our contribution guidelines to highlight how heavily this project relies on issues and discussions?
Yeah, I usually look at right, the PR and issues. I rarely look at the discussion side. So when like now I looked at discussions, some of them there are no response. Just one discussion is created, nobody responded to that. So maybe we based on the issues are prioritized based on the milestone, I think. So I think we need something like a same thing, like we need, okay, this discussion we want to conclude by end of this milestone or some time frame, or prioritize the discussion. Then we can focus on that thing. Right.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I just want to take this will probably be the last thing that we get to in this meeting. So if anyone isn't interested in quickly evaluating our existing contributing document and jumping into how we're going to create an issue to actually track how we're going to update this document so that newcomers can understand how we prioritize and define work. Feel free to leave, but that's going to be probably the last 10 minutes. And just looking at this quickly, we have a contributing, we've got a way to report bugs and creating issues, contribution, code review, code style, documentation. So there seems to be here, it doesn't really call out discussions. And it doesn't really call out what the maintainers, what our commitments are when a discussion is created, or even how to flag it correctly. So perhaps what we should do is contributor document needs an update. I'm just going to call out the existing contributors. Link this. Has a few gaps that should be addressed in order to provide the new users in with a better onboarding experience. Specifically,
Another thing I was just looking at is that it doesn't seem like there's a way for maintainers to manually mark discussions as answered, which is kind of strange. Like I'm looking at pairs renamed bundle deployment, or rather bundle instance to bundle deployment discussion. That's clearly been come to completion. It's difficult to see that propagated when it shows up as an unanswered discussion point. So yeah, maybe there are some pretty glaring limitations with discussions.
Tim, sorry about that. I accidentally hit the mute button when I was typing away, or so I couldn't hear anything. Could you just comment? What I think you said was that there are some limitations to the discussions, primarily around actually closing them once a decision has been made. Is that correct?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so I think that could be incorporated as part of this work. As part of this ticket, better guidelines running how this project pulls in new works. I'm just going to call it out here. Define maintainers commitment to addressing issues / as they pop up. Okay, so I think this is at least a good way to track it. I think I'm happy. I'll just assign this to myself for now, and if I can't get to it, I'll assign it to someone else. But what I hope to get out of this is just better define how we use some of the tools available to this team to make design decisions and track work, so that newcomers to the community have a single point of reference to get integrated and engaged with the community and like the existing workflows we have for accepting new work. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes, the one more thing. So the community level, we have the enhancements repository. Do we use it?
So that is a great question. We have used the enhancement repo historically to discuss some of the things we're hoping to move towards with the new APIs, right? However, I think there's been a lot of iteration and really agile development in the sense that we've introduced stuff, we've introduced breaking changes, obviously prior to releasing a major version. And so what the design workflow looks like today may not be super closely aligned with what it works once we have a V1 out. And I think that'd be something that the community would decide on, right? So
I think from my perspective, what I've liked to see is, so EPs are historically kind of difficult for introducing like net new things. And so certainly trying to bootstrap like RuckPack, which started as like kind of an MVP and then saw a lot of iteration, as Alex alluded to, a bunch of breaking changes. You know, that kind of churn in the EP process might be a bit difficult to wrangle in. So what I think we've landed on so far is like, we can use one pagers. We'll have a team driving HackMD that houses all these one pagers. Let's get agreement from the maintainers, and then link the HackMD to the tracking ticket. Let's implement that tracking ticket and go from there. In terms of like, oh, should we have an EP that aggregates all that discussion into one single home? Potentially, that's a problem I'm less familiar with right now, or how to aggregate all that might be a bit more challenging. But I think from my perspective, let's just continue going down the one pager train and having discussions in GitHub issues, and we can reevaluate whether we need to start going through enhancement process, whether that's entry or in the enhancements repository.
Okay, so I'm just going to call out that historically we've used enhancement proposals to submit net new ideas and have used GitHub issues and discussions to drive feature development. Right?
Yep.
And I'm just going to say that like implements. Implement EPs. And I think, you know, the fact that we don't have something to point to that kind of outlines this means that our contributing doc obviously has some shortcomings. And I think that's fine since, you know, I think the process has evolved, you know, since the project was started. So it just needs to be updated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that needs to see some love. Just difficult, right? I mean, balancing features on top of documentation, on top of, you know, contributing docs. It's difficult to make it a first-class experience for contributors, but definitely don't disagree.
Yeah.
Maybe we even throw this in a milestone, Alex. Maybe just throw it into the next one, get out of the way. Depending on
Just
how.
backlog.
I mean, I would put this. I'd be a little more aggressive. Maybe.
B9.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Sweet. Okay. Beauty. Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour. So unless anybody has any pressing issues that they want to discuss, I think we can bring it to a close. Tim, I didn't see this one.
It's all right. I was just linking up to it earlier. I could call it.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see what you mean. There's no way to like close this now.
I had a little triage label.
Okay. Yeah, well, we'll define how we're going to close discussions once we, you know, as part of this work. Okay, well, everybody, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to thank you all for being here today, and we will see you next week at the OLM working group meeting. Bye for now.
Thank you.